It was an explosive and viral trend on Twitter. 85% of Americans approve of Joe Biden's speech. Every prominent leftist was hooting and hollering. They were saying, we owned you, Republicans. This proves we're right. This country's on the right track. And Joe Biden may be the most consequential president since FDR. Please clap. You needed to say please clap because the reality was it wasn't true. I showed the CNN poll that actually said of those who viewed Joe Biden's speech very positively, it was 51%. And Donald Trump scored 57% in his first speech. So when you're actually looking at real polls among Americans and not viewers, surprise, surprise, Trump actually did better. We got a bunch of more information now coming in because as CBS News reported, 85% of viewers approve of Biden's address to Congress. CBS News polling says, well, you clicked on the video, so clearly you know what's going to come next. Snopes. Everybody loves Snopes. They're like the worst fact-checking organization like ever. That's why it's really funny when they fact-check something and get it right. You're like, wow, if Snopes is saying it's false and we've actually looked at like it's really false. Because Snopes does this thing where they try to make things seem like they're not false or true, depending on like which Democrat actually said it or whether it's good or bad for the Democrat. So they do things like, you can watch a video of Donald Trump pull off a perfect double backflip. And you're just like, how did this 70-something-year-old man just nail a double backflip? And then sure enough, when it trends, Donald Trump scores 10 in the Olympics. You go on a Snopes and it's like, did Trump land a perfect backflip? False. Well, his backflip did score very well. Perfect is an opinion, and we can't say that's true. And then you're like, oh, come on. Or my favorite is when they add things like, did Donald Trump do a perfect double backflip on Sunday? False. And then when you scroll down, it's like, well, Trump did perform a perfect double backflip. It was actually on Saturday. That's how they do it. Well, here's what we got now from Snopes. Did 85% of Americans approve of Biden's speech? The viewing audience for Biden's first speech before a joint session of Congress was not representative of Americans as a whole. You know what I love about this? First, big old false. 85% of Americans approved of Joe Biden's first speech before a joint session of Congress. Not true. There's an article, I think it's who wrote it? Was it Salon who wrote this? I don't know. Some leftist magazine. They were like, even though the audience was 54% Democrat, we can still see 85% approved of it. You got to slow down there, buddy. The country isn't 54% Democrat. That's the issue. So an overwhelming majority, or I should say a disproportionate amount of people relative to the American people were watching this. So of course they approved of Joe Biden. They're Democrats. Now, it's fair to say Republicans didn't want to watch this anyway. But you know what I love the most? How do you think CNN frames this? Do you think CNN is like, well, Joe Biden. Let me show you something. Joe Biden's ratings in the gutter. Biden's address to Congress snares 26.9 million viewers, way down from Trump, as ABC tops broadcast and cable update. What I find really funny is the reason why nobody's watching Joe Biden is not because of people not watching TV, because he could have gotten views anywhere. But I guess they're talking specifically about cable ratings. Okay. To a certain degree, I would say yes. Joe Biden's losing ratings because people don't like watching TV. Sure. However, a lot of people did watch live and gave him a thumbs down. CNN, of course, wants to make sure they frame this as in the most defensive way possible. Oh, Brian Stelter. Biden's first address to Congress wasn't immune to TV ratings erosion. Oh, is that it? Is that it? Is that why it was 54% Democrat, disproportionately Democrat? Because people aren't watching TV? Okay, to be fair, yes, to a certain degree, but come on, just admit it. Joe Biden flopped, and he flopped hard. Snopes says, The Origin, Rob Reiner. Oh, of all the misleading posts, they say on April 29, 2021, the day after U.S. President Joe Biden delivered his first speech to a joint session of Congress, a message started to circulate in social media claiming that 85% of Americans had approved of the president's remarks. Just think about this for 2 seconds. I tweeted this, many others did, of the viewers, not of Americans. And of course, it's mostly Democrats who are watching. If you really were winning the ideological battle, would you need to lie to people to claim that you have the support you do? Would you need to lie to claim people don't like Donald Trump? I don't think so. I think you'd just be like, Donald Trump got more votes than any sitting president in the history of the United States. But Joe Biden got more. Why? Not because he's popular, because people hated Trump. You know what? You can't build a government off of not liking someone. You need to build an administration based off of who you think has the best ideas. But Joe Biden, I said, just admit it. Joe Biden is not some grand, powerful figure. He's your silver medal. And everyone said, whoa, silver medal. Tim, Joe Biden's a participation trophy. No, participation trophy implies you lose. But I get the point. All right, let's say Joe Biden is like their bronze medal. They still made the podium, I guess, but it's not who they actually wanted. Snopes says, we don't know what percentage of Americans approved of Biden's speech yet, but it likely wasn't 85%. The stat comes from a report by CBS News who reported that 85% of viewers, not Americans, approved of the speech. As the audience for Biden's speech last night likely skewed to the left, this statistic does not represent all Americans. Rob Reiner said 85% of Americans approved of what President Biden had to say in his address to the nation. It's time for Republicans in Congress who stand for nothing to get out of the way and let the majority rule. Y'all ain't the majority. How many people actually watched? 26.9 million? Okay, so that's what, like 30% of the people who actually voted for Biden and like 15% of the voting body? That's it? Yeah, that's nothing. 26.9 million people watched, 85% approved. It's a lot of moderates. Check it out. They say 54% were Democrats, 25 were independents, and 18 Republicans. Of those, 85% approved of that speech, which is interesting. That means a lot of moderates did approve of Joe Biden's speech, and I think that's fine and reasonable. But you can see 54%, yeah, well, that boosts the numbers up quite a bit. They say CBS News director and elections of surveys, Anthony Salvanto, specifically mentioned that the audience last night was made up of mostly Democrats when he talked about the stat. They say on CBSN, we have some new polling. What we did was we talked to a representative sample of the audience nationwide who watched the speech, and they liked what they heard. We got 85% approving of the speech. Now, I've got to add right off the bat here that as is typical with presidential speeches, a lot of his own partisan made up the bulk of the audience. So this audience was majority Democrats watching it. And for context, back when President Trump was giving speeches, a lot of Republicans watched those. So you've got to know that behind these numbers, you got to know what that behind these numbers. But that said, the audience said they liked what they heard. For comparison's sake, CBS News found that 76% of people who watched Trump's speech before a joint session approved of the message. And I have to imagine Republicans aren't watching TV. Republicans are probably getting their news online. That's why when you go on YouTube and look at all of the digital viewership, thumbs down across the board for Joe Biden, because ain't nobody like what he got to say. Now, I'm not here to show you, Twitter erased it. Okay, never mind. I'm not here to show you the tweets that I have on my timeline, which I find kind of funny. But there was in the what's happening section, it auto updates. But we had this. Poll found that 85% of viewers approved of joint session address was based on largely Democratic audience, according to CBS News and Snopes. That's right. Even Twitter is coming out now and saying it. Y'all are pushing fake news. It's really weird, though. You know why? They've been pushing fake news. For the longest time, Twitter supported them in their push for fake news. Is Twitter just like anti-establishment? Trump's president, so they're going to push all the fake news about Trump. Now Biden's president, so now they're actually going to correct the record. I don't know why they would do that. Kind of makes no sense. But here's what they say. The survey was based on 943 interviews of adults who tuned in and drawn down from an earlier national YouGov survey of more than 10,000 people. Presidential speech audiences have become increasingly partisan. Sure, they barely interviewed anybody. 85% of 943 people. I get it. They have, the polls aren't just random. They do sample sizes and all that stuff. Fine. I don't think it really gets to the core, but sure, Democrats like Joe Biden. Unsurprising. Here's where it gets really important. The 85% number is completely meaningless when you realize Joe Biden could barely muster up any viewers at all. from Deadline. They say we have more numbers on the viewership for Joe Biden's address to a joint session of Congress. An estimated 26.9 million people watched the president's address across 16 broadcast and cable networks, according to Nielsen. That's a steep drop from the 47.7 million who watched Trump's first speech to a joint session on February 28th, 2017. Nielsen reported that the bulk of Biden's audience, 18.5 million, were 55 and older. Yikes. Bro. Let me guess. You sitting there watching this show, you're between the ages of 25 and 34, and your name is John. I wonder how many people just were like, hey, that's me. Let's do it broader. You're 18 to 54, and your name is Bill. A lot of Bills probably in that age range. It's a big age range. It's a key demo. Most of the people who watch me are not over 55. For those that are, hey, you guys are killing it. Thanks for hanging out. But what you see here with Deadline is that the bulk of the people who are watching TV, I suppose, man, it's the older crowd. And these are probably people who voted for Joe Biden. I wonder what the younger Gen Z people are thinking, because if they're mostly over 55 and mostly Democrat, I wonder what that means for the younger generation and who they're going to vote for in the future. They say starting at around 9:10 p.m., just over 1 hour speech aired live on ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox, Telemundo, Univision, PBS, CNBC, CNN, CNN-E, Fox Business, Fox News, MSNBC, Newsmax, News Nation, and Newsy. I almost got through that. Now, earlier, I guess they mentioned, let me read a little bit more. They say Joe Biden's first address to a joint session drew 22.6. So this is the updated number. We now know it's 26.9 million viewers. Down. Bad. Do I care that 15% of the voting Americans watched Joe Biden, and of that 15%, like 12% approved of what he said? 12% liked what he had to say? Let me just tell you something. Of the entire voting body, the overwhelming majority who did not watch Joe Biden speak, they can't have approved of what he said because they did not watch him. It's that simple. Well, of course, CNN's going to attribute this to it's TV ratings erosion. Don't blame Joe Biden. It's not Joe Biden's fault. Stelter writes, the television ratings for President Joe Biden's first address to a joint session were far weaker than the equivalent events by past presidents. But the decline probably has more to do with the state of television and the state of the presidency. Nielsen estimated that 26.9 million people, this we know, they say, former President Donald Trump's equivalent address to Congress averaged 48 million viewers. And his State of the Union address last year, shortly before the pandemic, averaged 37 million viewers. A year ago, Donald Trump had 37 million. I don't think that massive drop off makes sense for just TV. This is Joe Biden's first address to a joint session of Congress. For Trump, it was his fourth. So people are probably like, yeah, whatever, I get it. Been there, done that. I'd imagine you'd at least see a miniature boost of some sort because people want to know what Biden has to say, unless they don't want to know what Biden has to say. And there you go. Stelter says, the pandemic accelerated what has already been evident for years, gradual erosion in live TV audience in the U.S. Simply put, as more people spend more time watching on-demand programming, the public is less inclined to watch live events. Sagging ratings for award shows like the Emmys and the Oscars have underscored this trend. Additionally, Nielsen's live TV estimates don't account for all the ways an event like a presidential address is delivered across all internet, not to mention radio and other formats. So the use of a single TV rating, okay, just stop. Just stop. It's irrelevant. The same thing you're saying now was true for Donald Trump. When Trump gave his speech in 2020 and got 37 million, people were watching online and radio and other platforms as well. That's no excuse for Joe Biden doing bad. Sorry. He goes on to say, the performance of Wednesday's address on live TV may have taken as a reflection of Biden's deliberately low-key presidency, a sharp break from the drama and deceit of the Trump years. I love how they're already framing things. Looking further back in time, when internet viewership was not a major factor, about 52 million people tuned in for Barack Obama. I will point out that there is truth here, okay? It's just the framing is what I don't like. Go check the roster for MTV. MTV, when did it launch? In the 80s? And they played a lot of music videos. It was fun. You could turn it on and they'd be playing a music video. And it was like listening to the radio, but music videos, I guess. That's why it was called music television. And then they started to realize that the younger generation could get music more on demand. We entered the internet era. And so they started doing more reality TV programming and shows, like what was it? Real World and things like that. Turn on MTV now. What is it? Literally nothing but ridiculousness. That's it. That's insane. I bet they film like 5 episodes of ridiculousness per day. And then they just like, because how are you going to fill up 90% of your roster with just one show? They must film like crazy. The point is, I know, maybe you like ridiculousness, whatever. Rob Dyrdek's cool dude. Pro skater. Big fan. But the issue is that nobody needs to watch TV anymore. Nobody needs to watch live TV when you got everything on demand. So what's going to happen? Well, do you want to watch random stuff? That's how it used to be. Now, people are just going to turn on MTV because it's the ridiculousness channel. May as well just be on-demand ridiculousness. So that's true. Ratings are going to go down because nobody needs to watch this stuff. And I do think the internet is contributing to a de-cohesion of sorts in American culture. Now, this is really good news for all of us, though. The less people watch, duplicitous people like Brian Stelter, the more they'll get a wide variety of views. At the same time, they'll believe completely different things and won't be able to unite. So there is a challenge there. I don't know how you unite the masses around one culture or one idea. It's very difficult, but you definitely need that to maintain a working country. For the time being, I mean, my rate, I think, I ended up doing average during Joe Biden's speech. The live viewership went down for us on the Timcast IRL show for 2 reasons. Biden was speaking live and because Steven Crowder was also live at the same time. And that, but after the show ended, our viewership maintained its average because people can come back and watch the podcast whenever, and they did. So it should be that we should see Joe Biden doing better than Donald Trump if he's really that popular, right? Well, apparently he's not. But this brings me to my final story. Will Donald Trump be president once more? The Daily Mail says Trump says he is 100% thinking of running in 2024 and could tap DeSantis as his running mate. But what if the Florida governor fancies his own run? I think people got mad at me when I said this. I'd rather have Ron DeSantis than Donald Trump. Although I don't know enough about DeSantis yet, let me just tell you, Donald Trump didn't do anything about social media censorship. DeSantis did. So that plays a huge role in things. And I think DeSantis is much more of a palatable politician than Donald Trump is for a lot of people. So long as DeSantis proves he's a fighter, and I think he is, and he represents the values of the Trump base and conservatives, which he does, I think he has a good chance, and I would prefer him. Although I'm not 100% because I'd have to look at his policies, and I'm not a big fan of the Republican Party, so we'll see. But I understand people really, really love Donald Trump. The Daily Mail says, Donald Trump said Thursday that he's thinking about running, maybe Ron DeSantis. Quote, "Are you thinking about running again, Mr. President?" Maria Bartiromo asked Trump. Yes, 100%. And the polls show that everybody wants me to do it. He added, 100% I'm thinking about running, and we will, I think, be very successful. When asked if Trump would consider running with DeSantis, he gave a glowing assessment of the Republican governor of Florida. Well, he's a friend of mine. I endorsed Ron, and after I endorsed him, he took off as a rocket ship. He's done a great job as governor. And that's true. He has. He absolutely has. A lot of the people like that, I'm just saying what I read and what you read. They love that ticket. But certainly Ron would be considered. He's a great guy, the former president said. I'll also point out there was a poll they did that kind of went viral. And they said, without Donald Trump, who's number one? I'm pretty sure DeSantis was number one, but interestingly, Candace Owens was number 5. Could you imagine how hilarious it would be if the first female president and the first black female president was Candace Owens? That'd be hilarious. Well, Kamala Harris gets the role of vice president, but I don't think Candace Owens will be elected president. He says, they're going to say picking DeSantis as his running mate could be a tactical move to get a potential challenger out of the way. As rumors swirl, the governor is considering launching a bid himself for the White House. Let me just tell you, people, if Donald Trump runs, Donald Trump wins the primary. OK, now the presidency itself, I don't know, because you will see if you thought it was bad when they're trying to get him out of office, imagine what's going to happen now when it's like he's coming back. They're going to be like banging their heads on walls. If Trump is in the primary and Ron DeSantis enters the primary, Trump will win. That period. I think so. If that happens, DeSantis then joins Trump on the ticket. That's my opinion. We'll see, though. Trump's kind of an old dude. They're going to say he also said Trump, a Wednesday report revealed, is preparing to restart his MAGA rallies. He also said Wednesday in a podcast interview that he will announce if he is running for president again after the 2022 midterms. CNN reported Wednesday that Trump had initiated discussions with his advisors about restarting the rallies on behalf of Republican candidates he's endorsed. The massive events could resume as early as May, despite the prevailing threat of COVID. During a podcast taping on the Dan Bongino show, Trump said the appropriate time to announce a third presidential run would be after next year's midterm election, as he also slammed a potential GOP primary rival, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan, calling him a total loser. So I'm giving it very serious consideration, Trump said, of another presidential run. He said the polls in his favor were very positive. Nobody's seen anything more positive. Nobody's seen anything ever more positive. Okay. Yeah, we love Trump for that reason, right? An NBC News poll this week showed Trump's grip on the Republican Party loosening and his favorables dipping down, receiving good marks from 32% of American adults. Quote, if you do it, I think probably the most appropriate time would be right after the 22 election. That's my opinion. Could do it sooner, but I think right after the election would be good, especially if you have a good election. As he asked Trump about running again, Bongino had floated Trump picking a vice president early, but Trump seemingly ignored that piece of the question. Well, I believe YouTube took down the interview with Bongino. And I will say, whether or not Trump's grip is loosening, Ron DeSantis is a politician, for better or for worse. There are a lot of things Trump didn't understand about being in office. He was a businessman, and many people predicted this. That what happens is these business people get into office thinking that now that you're in charge, you can snap your fingers like running a company. At your company, when you're the boss, you can be like, you're fired, you're hired. In government, you're like, you're fired as soon as I get approval to fire you from the other bureaucratic department. It's not so easy. You're hired. Now just go get confirmed by a Democrat-run House or a Democrat-run Senate and see how that works. Granted, the Republicans had the Senate. But the point I'm making is that it's not that easy to just hire people. So we'll see how things play out. I don't think Joe Biden is nearly as popular as they're trying to pretend he is. And that's why they're pretending he is, because he's flopping. That means the Democrats are in serious trouble. Joe Biden is their silver medal. And what I mean by that is it's not who they wanted, but they were willing to accept. I guess a silver medal is pretty good, but, not a participation trophy because they won. But come 2024, Biden's just their placeholder. Kamala Harris ain't going to pull it off. I don't think they have any real Democrat talent. That's why I think DeSantis needs to be the Republican nominee, at least right now. If it's Donald Trump, the left will scream, rip out their hair, and bang their head on the wall. If it's Ron DeSantis, most people will not care. And DeSantis is pretty good. We'll see how it plays out. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.